So my name is Jay Patel, and I am a Scoutmaster in Troop 61. I am from Pacific Skyline Council. I also sit on the board for Pacific Skyline Council as their treasurer. I've been in scouting for about 12 years. And if we were actually doing this class live, I would actually go around and have you guys all introduce yourself. But as people are starting to come in, we'll go ahead and get started. So the class that we're here for today is really around youth leadership training. My email address is there. So if there's anything you want to follow up with me or I don't get to, feel free to reach out to me. In addition, this class is being recorded. So you can, it'll be posted in a couple of days. And so you can actually go back. If you don't get bored of listening to my voice, you can go back and listen to it again. So with that said, I will go ahead and get started. So we're going to cover what ILST is. And then I flip-flop the next two bullet points. The second bullet point that I'm going to cover is actually an online and virtual ILST course that you can actually do with your troop. At the same time, if we were doing this as a live training class, I would actually go through the next bullet, which I've actually put in here as an appendix. And so I will point out a few resources in there, but my goal is not to put you to sleep. And really the important of this is to make sure that we go ahead and deliver a comprehensive ILST course. So I'm gonna, just start off with a couple of quotes. Training boy leaders to run their troop is the Scoutmaster's most important job. Does everyone agree with that? If you do, raise your hand, put your thumbs up, whatever's easier. Okay. And the second bullet point is train scouts to do the job, then let them do it. So how many of you leaders actually still do the job versus letting the scouts go? Raise your hand. Excellent. So I've got one or two people that raise their fingers, but it's good. And in case you see me looking a different way, I've got multiple monitors, and so I'm not trying to ignore you guys. But you guys are all on my other monitor watching me. And then the last bullet point is never do anything that a boy can do. And this is really important, especially when you guys have to deal with parents who actually want to do everything, including earn the Eagle rank, but it's difficult to explain to them that they've already exceeded the age of 18, so they can't get their Eagle anymore. So that's the most important part. So remember these three quotes. Feel free to use them in your ILST training classes. And then if we go ahead and get started, we take a look at it. So not knowing anybody's background and not being able to have a full introduction, I wanted to kind of go through and just kind of give everybody that we have Scouts BSA has a youth training continuum. And so we basically build on this as we go through. So the first thing that's taught is ILST, and that's usually taught at the unit level. And that's what we're going to cover today. But I also wanted to make sure that people understood that in addition to ILST, at the council level, we also do something called NYLT, National Youth Leadership Training. And that just builds on the leadership and the modules that we cover in ILST. And then that takes, at that point, a lot of scouts actually stop, but there's also additional ones that they can take. They can go to the National Advanced Youth Leadership training class, and that's usually held at like Philmont or more at the regional national camps. And they can also do Kodak, and Kodak just pushes them beyond the boundary. So actually Kodak enables them to basically put everything into play that they learned theoretically. But I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. And so with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing that you're going to do is, and you can do it either today or you can do it later, is, as everyone knows, we're currently in a pandemic, and different councils run into different counties. There's different county rules about social distancing, about wearing masks, about gatherings, the size of the gatherings. So there's a lot going on. So National has basically put together an online version and a virtual version. And if you go to scouting.org/training/youth, there's actually an instructional overview document that they just posted just a few days ago. I don't even know if they've made a full announcement yet, but that will be coming out. And so for some of you guys, and I'm going to take a quick poll again, how many of you guys are familiar with ILST? Okay, so we've got 3 or 4 people. Okay, so almost half of you guys are familiar with it. I'm just going to check the waiting room. Let's make sure that there's nobody in the waiting room. Yep. All right, perfect. So a lot of you guys are familiar with ILST. So this may be a little bit new, but you're probably wondering, like, how do I conduct the ILST class if we're currently, in this pandemic and we can't gather together? So there's 2 different options that you can use, and National has done a pretty good job of putting that. And I'll go through both of these, which is where I want to spend most of the time. And then we'll cover the other bullet point in a few minutes as well. So option number 1 is 45 minutes. It's self-taught and it's online. So basically the scout, 13 years or older, will set up a login and a password, and they'll set up an account, and they'll go to myscouting.org, log in, and then click on BSA Learning Center. From there, they'll go to the catalog, they'll search for ILST, and the first module is 9 minutes. The second module is 36 minutes. Make sure they enroll, and then there's a certificate for that, right? So what did I just go over? Well, let's just kind of go through it. So hopefully you guys could see. So this is the page. So this is the training for youth. So you'll see it here, introduction for, and it's an online version. Here's the instructional document that we covered a few minutes ago. Now, if we go into scouting.org, myscouting.org, and you log in, and just with a quick show of hands, I mean, I see quite a number of you guys. How many of you guys have actually, your scouts may or may not be familiar, but hopefully most of you guys have logged into myscouting.org. So, hopefully you've gone in there. Once you go in there, you'll see that it says BSA Learn Center. And it's actually, the first time I logged in, I thought this was an ad, but the designers felt that this was the best way to say it. So it doesn't exist anywhere else in the menu or anywhere. You have to click on this graphic here. So you click on the graphic, and lo and behold, it takes you into a training class. And if you've taken classes before, you'll see those posted in here. They will go over to the catalog, and then they can, at this point, they can just type in ILST, do a quick search on it. Oh, it's already here. And sometimes there are duplicates, but basically what it is that the introduction and the introduction to leadership skills, they could be wrapped into a different module. They'll give you a brief description, and this one is 9 minutes. And I'm actually going to click on this one. And these 2 are the same, and the first and the second one are the same as well. And so if the scout goes in here and they click on visit, and they click on the enroll button, which will enroll them. And you can see each of the modules are here. All of these modules tend to be one way. So they'll quiz them along the way, and then at the end, it'll wrap up. Now, once they complete both of these modules, module 1 and module 2, then they basically have completed ILST training. Okay. And so I'm going to go back here for a second. So again, everything's covered in here, but once they enroll, and then once they complete it, they'll get their certificate that they've completed ILST. Okay, now if we switch over, this is where I was. So again, it's a 9-minute video that includes description of each leadership position in troops, including roles, responsibilities, troop organizations, introductions to vision, and servant leadership. And then what they've also done is gone through module 2, which is tools of leadership, which is 5 videos totaling about 36 minutes on 5 different topics that they have. And so the scout is responsible for completing those. And then once they complete them, they've completed the ILST training. So about 45 minutes it would take them to go ahead and complete that. Now, if we go into the next section, which is the virtual side of it. So again, you would go to the same location, and I'm just going to go over there just for a second, just so I can show you guys. So here, what we're going to do is it still goes through ILST training, but this is the key part right here. National wants to track who's using the materials. So they don't want me to distribute the materials to you, but they do have directions. They have a PowerPoint already set up, and they also have a script that you can use for what they call as Module 3. And we'll cover that in a minute. So if I toggle back over, so what is that? So basically it's a 1 hour course. It will be, web-based. In this case, National uses Zoom, and I'll touch on Zoom in a minute as well. But you can use any online web sharing type of tool that you have, and it requires 2 facilitators. Now, when you look at the instructional overview, it will actually provide Zoom instructions. Now, many of you by now probably have an account with Zoom or a work-related account with Zoom, so you can go and use that. But if you don't, you can easily set up a Zoom account for free. But remember that in 40 minutes, it times out. The solution around that is when it does time out, you can let the scouts know around 35 minutes that they're going to time out. When they time out, they can just click on the link again, and it starts another 40 minutes. They don't need new instruction or anything like that. But it gets, you may lose a few scouts in the process of doing that. But, assuming that you don't use that. And then, of course, there's other tools like, Google's got theirs, and there's a whole slew of other WebEx, whatever you'd want to use. But bottom line is that you need 2 facilitators. So what are 2 facilitators? Well, they have to be 2 adults or 1 adult and a scout that has previously completed the ILST course. Okay. And again, if you send an email to these guys and let them know that you want to do a virtual ILST training class, then what they will do is they will provide you the directions as well as a PowerPoint that you can share, and then they'll give you a script for Module 3. Okay. So with that, does anyone have any questions? What I've covered so far. You can unmute your mic.
Hey, I have a question. Sorry, this is Sam Gilbert. My question is, do you have a suggestion of the virtual one you just talked about versus the online one you talked about before?
Either one works. I haven't done either one of them, but I do know that if, I think the virtual one would be a little bit better because for one, it's 1 hour. And you want to try to keep it to 1 hour, but it's interactive. So it's like this presentation. Like if I turn all your mics off and I just keep talking, then you guys will probably pass out. But if I keep it interactive, then, we can have some dialogue as we're going through. So I would favor the virtual one over the online one. I also think the virtual one would be good because just like this presentation, you can get anywhere from, the entire PLC can be joining it, as opposed to scouts sitting on their own at home and just going through and click, 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 and they're done and they get their certificate. Okay, so good. All right, Sam. Anybody else have a question?
Sorry, I came in a couple of minutes late, so you might have already mentioned this, but what is in Module 3, and do we need to do that one as well?
Yes. So if they do module, and I should have covered that before I opened it up for questions. So Module 1 and Module 2 basically is the online version, and we covered that. And then here's Module 3. So in Module 3, basically, you don't do Module 1 and 2 and 3, you just do Module 3. So Module 3 is only the virtual side. And so you'll spend about 10 minutes on team development and characteristics, group decisions, leadership styles and tools, ethics and values, and EDGE method. Okay. Now, somebody, I was asking the questions, if you look at them, there's not a lot of overlap between these as well as the other ones. So you can do all 3 of them if you'd like. So you can, one way, I think going back to Sam's question is you could tell all the scouts that, hey, you want them to do Module 1 and 2, and then you'd have a virtual session for Module 3. So you can do that too, and then you can build on it. And it'll be about 2 hours of their time to go through that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, wow, quiet bunch. Okay. So let's assume we weren't in COVID and we were all sitting across each other. Then I would be going through this class a little bit different. And the way I would be doing it is I actually go through and I'll go through these slides. And again, these slides are all available for you guys to have. But what I've done over the years is when I first took the ILST course, I took the information that I had, and then as part of my Wood Badge ticket, I actually built this particular plan, which I'm about to share with you. And since then, I've been presenting it and turning these resources over to people so they can go ahead and leverage them, and they can use them for their own, for their own troops. And I'll give you a URL in a few minutes that you can hopefully be able to click on that URL, and then it'll give you access to all these materials. So you don't need to, anything that's in red, these are all available on a shared Google Drive that I'll make accessible to all of you guys. So what I do is during a live class session where it's not online, it's not virtual, but you're actually going to physically have a meeting, one of the things that I've been doing is trying to get, scouts to basically do a planning meeting, and you do it 3 months prior. You invite some adults and some older scouts. You review the training material, and I will go through the facilitator guide and the PowerPoint in a minute. And then you also kind of identify date, time, location, and carpool. You assign responsibilities and tasks to the adults, and you tell everyone to review. There's actually an entire ILST planning guide, and I'll cover that in a minute as well. And so you do that in meeting number 1. And the whole reason for this is to basically get the older scouts involved so that they can also conduct the ILST training. I have seen, especially in our own troop, when I was doing the ILST training, the kids will listen when all the adults deliver the ILST training, but when older scouts deliver it and the younger scouts are listening to them, it's a whole different dynamic. And we go back to what Baden Powell said, is to have the boys do the work, okay? You will also have a trainers meeting. So that was a planning meeting. Now in the trainer meeting, you can identify it like, let's do this during the advancement meeting, and it's 30 to 45 minutes. You meet with a few scouts and you review the topics. You ask them if they can, identify activities and provide feedbacks, and then have them sign up for various topics that they're going to teach. And in a minute, I'm going to put all this stuff together, and you can kind of see it. 2 months prior, you would have another trainer meeting. And again, now you would confirm the topics. You would work with the scouts to basically not spend so much time putting a PowerPoint presentation together or covering the material, but really just going through the activities. And then 1 month prior, you would do basically a dress rehearsal. So the way I did it before is when I worked with the scouts is I would get the older scouts to meet with me 3 times. And each time we only took a little chunk off the back, knowing that most of these boys and now girls are also very involved with homework, sports, music, name it. So you can't expect them to spend hours, putting an ILST training package together. So I basically, what I'm presenting here is basically getting them to just focus only on, putting some hands-on activities together. And I'll cover this all in a minute as well. And then we have a final planning meeting that we basically do 1 month before. So we minimize the scouts from doing anything except attending the ILST training. So what we did was I got the adults to do the shopping list, the cooking, finalize the equipment. We, in the old days, we used to have a tour plan, get the medical forms, but all of this is done by the adults. So the scouts, the older scouts, are only focused on teaching the younger scouts the material that's covered, that's given to us by National for ILST, and they focus on the activities. Now, how can we get all this stuff done, right? And so this is what I wanted to kind of show you. So what I did was I put some resources together. So I just want to kind of go over the resources first. So it may be a little bit hard to see up here, the header, but it's 01, and this is the actual presentation. So this is what I'm going over today that you get a copy of. Number 2, we'll actually come back to number 2, but in order for you to plan this is, right now it's a PDF, but I give it to you in a Word document. So you can actually go through and just drop in where everything's yellow you can go ahead and replace it. Now, it's been vented by a couple of classes, so I believe it's pretty comprehensive. Obviously, it's not built for COVID, but you can put in the folks' names and it's just a template. It goes over the electronic policy, cell coverage, and you can see all the details there. You can talk about, loading pictures for photography, and you can also identify where you're going to hold it. So some, and I'll cover that. Actually, I'll cover that in a few minutes. I'll just finish going through all these things. Now, this is the most critical thing that I've created that hopefully people can find useful. And again, it's number 3. It's a third document. This is actually in the form of an Excel spreadsheet. And so, as I was telling you guys, if we didn't have COVID, we would actually be going through 3 modules. And as we go through the 3 modules, what I've done is I've indicated roughly the time the presenter should be taking, 5 minutes, 10 minutes to 15 minutes. I've put a slot in here so you can drop in the name of the presenter. I also tell them that in the actual ILST guide that's put out by National, what page number they should be reading. I should also give them the ability to plan, so they can say that they have read the pages, and when they're done, they can say yes. And so you can use this as a tool in your planning meeting to go around and make sure all the scouts did read what they were supposed to read. National does give games as well as reflections. And so again, it gives you the page number. So a perfect example of this is, let's say my job is to, I sign up for communication. So as a scout, my name would go here. I have to cover this in 20 to 30 minutes. In order to help me prepare, I basically have to read about 5 or 6 pages. And then once I read it, I say yes. I also need to focus on what games to give. And so that's where these games and reflections come in. So it tells me exactly what pages to look at. And I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. And basically then they can go ahead and plan the activity they want. So there's a couple, usually at the games and reflection, they give you a couple and you get to decide which ones you want. So you can pick that. So if we look at it, this is what it looks like. It's the Introduction to Leadership Skills for Troops Facilitators Guide. It's about an 85-page document. So I tell the scouts there's no need to print out the whole thing. It's nicely page numbered. So just go ahead and use the page number and print out your sections, and then you can use your sections to build it. So they'll go through module 1. So what this is these are all the pages that are referring to that guide. And then you, as the ILST instructor, you can use this to make sure that that they're getting the job done as you get closer to the activity. In addition to that, one of the modules that you'll see here, it actually says troop organization and troop position orientation video. So this one can go for like 5 hours, or it can go for 15 to 25 minutes, because what you're doing is you're going through all the position descriptions and what their roles and responsibilities are. And what National has done is it actually has a document that's position description cards. So basically the boys would, each of the, boys would get their cards. They can go ahead and separate them. You can print them out, pre-print them out front and back. They could go ahead and put their names in there, and they can use this as an activity as well. But it basically goes through every single position that we have. So even if you're going to do online or virtual, you can leverage these, cards so that, your scouts know. A lot of time the boys are, they sign up for positions, and I'm going to be the troop guide, but I'm not really sure what my role is going to be. This will give them a description of what their roles are going to be. And then at the same time, what I love about them is that on the back of the card, they get to write down, like, what does success look like for our troop, from a perspective of a den chief, and what are my goals to get us there, which would be the den chief's goals. So the SPL, as well as all the other scouts and leadership positions, can work together to come up with, identifying how to make a successful troop. Okay. Now, if you are presenting this, there is a 31-page, slide deck that I have that takes the same thing, because it makes it easier, is for you to actually go through and talk about the different areas. And all this is just to supplement information. It's not required. National doesn't require you to go through it, but it's just material that I have collected over the years. I can't take 100% credit, you know, but it's really, you know, it's really critical that you find there's going to be lots of resources out there. And this is just some resources that I've kind of picked up from as well. Now, one of the things that I didn't go through in here, which I'll just touch on here, is when I first started doing ILST in our troop, what we did was we did this as an overnight. Unfortunately, as many of you may or may not know, but the little basin cabin and campground actually burned down during our fires. But this was a beautiful place. A lot of people have a lot of memories there, but they used to have cabins there. And so what we would do is one cabin would be filled with a few adult leaders, and the other cabin would be filled with just the PLC. And, you know, we had a great time. They used to have a conference center there, or a building with a conference room. And so we would go there for overnight. We'd spend one night there, and we'd get there in the evening, and we'd do I think we would cover module 1. And then I'll go into something in a minute. And then on the second day, they wake up. It would be a long day, but then we would go home after that. But the most beneficial thing about taking the boys and now girls into, you know, away from their troop, away from home, just for one overnight, allowed them to bond together. And through all the various activities, whether they're presentations or hands-on activities that they're playing, they would actually bond as a team. And one of the biggest highlights that we did was, and that's where identified number 6 document comes in, is we would show a movie. And these are some of the best movies out there. This gentleman, Greg Gregory, had put together. And you'll see that he just makes a list of all of the movies. And the most, you know, and I'm sure most of you have probably seen this. Remember the Titans is a great one. And so this just tells you some movies you can play the night before, and it shows how teamwork actually comes together and how people can work together where we are. So hopefully that helps everyone in terms of the different, you know, resources that are available there. And I'm just going to see if I covered everything. The one thing I don't do in this class, and I'm hoping that nobody's disappointed, is I actually don't go through the modules and show you page by page what you're going to cover. I figured you guys are old enough, and more importantly, I probably pass out as well. So, you know, again, there's 3 modules that we cover. And then when you complete everything, and whether you do online, you do virtual, as well as you do a live class, the most important thing that people forget is feedback. And remember, feedback is a gift, right? So the ones that I think most of you guys are familiar with is roses, buds, and thorns. And I thought we did an amazing job the first time I delivered ILST. All the adults did a great job. We had one adult that actually went long, and then another adult that actually was short, but we thought we did an amazing job. And then came the feedback. So the boys identified that that one leader went too long, and we almost passed out. And then they turned around, and this is where the feedback came that said, hey, this is great from you guys, but it would have been great if some of the boys that went to NYLT or some of the boys that had already completed ILST would have come and delivered it. So keep in mind that, you know, this will give you a great deal of feedback. And more importantly, you may not be able to change it for the ILST that you deliver, but at the end of the day, you may be able to, you know, present this information to others afterwards. Okay. So now the question comes up. I think a couple of you guys have pinged me privately as well as in total. So where do you get this information, right? And so what I've done is, and I'm going to, just in case this link doesn't work, I've labeled all of the documents. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And they're all sitting on a Google Drive. Let me just get there real quick. And just in case it's not working, I'm going to copy and paste this and put this to everyone. Okay. And so hopefully that will answer everyone's questions. I know a couple of you guys sent me private messages saying, where can I download this? Feel free to go ahead and, download it from there. I'll also make sure that the links work. So then that way, if you get this information, I'll put, the links in there. But you should be able to download these from my Google hard drive. And again, most of these are in PDF, but the PowerPoint slide is here, so you can modify it. The Excel file, which is the presenters tool that I put together a couple of years ago. I've actually updated it last year when the materials changed. I forgot to change the date here. And then the planning guide is just my Word document to make sure if you're going to do an offsite that you covered all the different things. With that, this pretty much covers everything I wanted to cover. Yep. So now, feedback from you guys. So any questions, feedbacks? Those of you that did raise your hand and said that you did do ILST before, if you'd like to unmute your mic, feel free to share best practices. We still have about 20 minutes. So feel free to share with everyone what worked, what didn't work, anything I forgot. I won't feel hurt.
Hi Jay, this is Michael.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Michael.
Jay, this is terrific. Really, congratulations on an excellent presentation.
Oh,
I'm thinking back that this is a thought, and I'm interested in other people's perspectives. And I think the approach depends a little bit about the maturity of the troop. So I'm the committee chair for a brand new girls troop, Troop 673 in Scotts Valley, and they're just new to scouting. No one's gone to NYLT. We couldn't pull off an ILST last year. So this is going to be I really want us to do this, but I'm thinking it needs to be a bit more adult-led this year, with the aspiration that we shift that next year. And I'm interested in the group's perspective on that. Is that that makes sense, or should we really have the girls do the training this year?
Mike, are you connected to a boys troop?
No, we are 673G, all girls.
Nice, good, congratulations. If you were, I was going to suggest get your brother troop or whatever they call them to help you out, but that won't work.
Yeah, good suggestion. Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that I think, and have my video on because I'm also making dinner while I'm listening, but I think it's a good idea to get the kids involved right away. I think once you set it up where they expect the adults to deliver first, they'll always expect the adults to deliver first. And I'm in Troop 93 in Salinas, and I work up in Sunnyvale before COVID, and we partnered this summer, and I'm presenting on Friday night this time on keeping things going during COVID. I think it would be great for you to find another girl troop to partner with. We partnered with 566 and 2566 and did a whole merit badge program midway this summer. And I think it presents a really great opportunity for kids to meet scouts from other troops and meet other leaders and still strengthen your own troop.
Excellent suggestion, Mary. Thank you for that perspective.
You're welcome.
And you're going to see over time, the main thing is that, when my son got into Boy Scouts, I remember, and I became a leader for the first 3 years, it was always adult led. And it wasn't until that I changed the model. And my main reason why I changed the model, and this is true in both boys troop and eventually in the girls troops as well, is you have a lot of girls and a lot of boys that get up in the higher rank levels. They become, Life Scouts or Eagle Scouts. Then they're looking for something to do. And so this is something that you can leverage. But again, it depends on the maturity of the troop, because if it's a brand new girls troop, then you're probably going to be more adult led. But you can definitely, get the kids more into the activities to get them to run some of the activities. So you may still present the material, but then get them involved with the activities is what I would recommend.
I'll just mention that our troop was really small when we joined, when my son joined. It's a troop that's been here since the 1960s, but many of the boys were eagling out around the time we joined. So it's been small, and it's been too adult led. So I've seen over time where our kids, the number one thing they say in boards of review is we need to plan more. So I think if you set the tone, that will help you in the long run and will help the kids as well. So some sort of balance, whatever works for you.
Right. Yeah, I'm totally about youth led, and I do worry about adult led becoming institutionalized or imprinted early.
Right.
And so that's a really excellent plan. I'm gonna, as we put this thing together, you've convinced me. I think we need to find a way, even with their no experience, we'll find a way for them to get up there and present the material. You know, we'll train them first, perhaps. Maybe use some of the online material, train the leaders,
right.
and then train the other folks.
Right. And just from my own personal perspective, with my experience is, you know, keeping adults limited. There's two things you have to make sure that you drill home really well in adults. And number one is to respect the time, because ILST is an introduction course at the unit level. What a lot of the scouts will realize very quickly is all the material that's being covered in ILST will be covered again at NYLT, but over a week. So what you're going to cover in 1 hour or 2 hours is actually going to be a 5-day, you know, course at NYLT. And so we had this problem in our troop where one of our leaders was, you know, talking about communication. And you think it'd pretty be basic, right? Oral, written. And he ended up going on for about 2.5 hours. And he was only given 10 minutes. So I couldn't interrupt him. I tried, other leaders tried, but he just kept going and going and going. And then, you know, the feedback, and it completely derailed us on our time. But that's the thing that you have to remember, is that make sure that adults know that there's a lot more material that we can cover in ILST, but it's just an introduction course, because we just want to start giving them, most of these boys and girls may or may not have been in leadership positions. And even if they have, they haven't been in leadership positions specific to, scouts. And so the job here is to basically introduce them to leadership and leading, and then we'll continue to build that over time as they get older in ranks, as they take other classes, and as they get experience. Okay.
Yeah.
We found that 45 minutes, after 45 minutes, you lose them.
Mm-hmm.
They might be there, but you've lost them.
Yes. So as adults, I still have 6 more minutes before we get to the 45-minute range before I lose all of you guys. So if there's any more questions, feel free to either type them in or speak up.
I've got a question for the group, because I've got a small troop, about 20 scouts, and over half of them are 6th graders who just joined us. And I don't have a lot of strong older ones right now. What do you think of the idea of having adults basically train the trainers? So those who do want to do leadership or show some leadership qualities, help them learn this material, and they in turn teach it to the other scouts.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts?
Hey Sam, this is JP. I am almost in the exact same boat. We got 11 Arrow of Lights last year, or actually in May. And our meetings can be kind of wild with that many younger scouts. Yeah. And some of our older scouts who we would be looking for to lead something like this, they're so busy with school and things like that they're just kind of at their wits' end.
Right.
I think it's doing a train the trainer, and then have the scouts once they're trained work with the other scouts, I think that's a great option. Actually, one of my assistant scoutmasters is sitting in on this as well. So have a funny feeling that we're going to be looking into this in the very near future.
Cool.
I was having to say my dear JP.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome.
Recognize some faces.
Yeah.
Any other questions? And I'm just going to flash up here one more time for you guys. Again, my email address is jpatel67@gmail.com. If you do have trouble accessing any of the material that I've covered today, or if you have any other specific questions, feel free to reach out. We're all here to help you guys be successful. We're in a very unfortunate time right now. A lot of our scouting activities have been canceled, and a lot of our councils are going through a lot of stuff going on internally as well as externally, but hang in there. And in the meantime, like I said, there's the online and virtual version of ILST, as well as hopefully you'll be able to do live events as well. We have one question that just came in on the chat. Is the ILST once a year or twice a year? There's really no right answer for that, but the rule of thumb that I use is that anytime you have a leadership change, you should try to schedule the ILST training right after that. So we just had our troop elections on Friday. And as a result of that, we're now working to get the ILST course set up so those boys can go through it. So some troops do it once a year in terms of elections. Some do it twice a year. And so it really depends on your troop, but you can do it as many times as you'd like. And especially now that we have an online and virtual version, you can even get the scouts to go ahead and start doing the online version right after the elections, and then, then schedule the virtual one. Okay. Anything else?